centralized index of notable clips, headlines, and references being shared across the community, organized for quick browsing. Use it to spot patterns, pull links, and build your own research list. Qnotables.com. Browse the notables, verify the facts, stay informed. All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Board's May 22, 2026 tonight's top story begins in Minnesota, where federal officials announced a major healthcare fraud takedown. The Justice Department, FBI, and Health and Human Services charged 15 defendants in schemes totaling more than $90 million. The cases involve Medicaid programs, autism services, housing stabilization, and personal care programs. Officials say the defendants billed taxpayers for services that were false, inflated, or never provided. This is not a small paperwork case. This is a major public money scandal, and federal officials say it is part of a much larger fraud investigation now reaching thousands of cases. The Minnesota fraud crackdown also includes what federal officials call the largest autism fraud case ever charged by the federal government. Prosecutors say the defendants targeted vulnerable programs, moved taxpayer money through fraudulent billing, and exploited weak oversight in state-run services. The case lands directly in the middle of a larger national debate over pandemic-era fraud, Medicaid abuse, and whether government benefit programs have been treated as open vaults by organized networks. House Oversight Chairman James Comer is now praising the Trump administration's push to hold the Minnesota fraudsters accountable. Comer says Minnesota has become a major focus for taxpayer fraud investigations, especially in social service programs. His message is direct. Taxpayers were robbed, the programs were abused, and the people responsible need to face consequences. The Feeding Our Future case remains one of the biggest examples of pandemic fraud in the country. Founder Amy Bach was sentenced to more than 41 years in prison for helping run a $250 million child nutrition fraud scheme. That money was supposed to feed children. Instead, prosecutors say it was stolen through fake claims, shell operations, and weak program controls. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins also called out Amy Bach by name after the Feeding Our Future sentencing. Rollins said Bach defrauded USDA feeding programs meant for hungry schoolchildren. The case now stands as one of the clearest examples of how emergency aid was looted during the pandemic years, while Americans were told the money was urgently needed for public good. The Small Business Administration is still dealing with massive pandemic-era fraud fallout. Earlier this year, SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler announced that more than 111,000 California borrowers were suspended over suspected fraud tied to PPP and EIDL loans totaling more than $8.6 billion. That means the fraud problem was not limited to one state, one program, or one agency. It was national, it was expensive, and the bill landed on taxpayers. Reports from early 2025 showed DOJ personnel seeking access to Small Business Administration systems, including human resources, contract, and payment systems. Lawmakers raised concerns over federal data, payment controls, and program oversight. That fight fits directly into the larger argument over who gets to inspect federal systems, who has access to the money trail, and whether the public will ever see the full scale of pandemic-era fraud. FEMA is also warning that disaster funds are for survivors, not personal gain. Federal agencies continue to warn about disaster fraud, identity theft, and scams that target relief money after emergencies. The message from FEMA is simple. Stealing disaster aid is a crime, and disaster funds are meant for victims, not fraud rings. Turning now to domestic politics, Senate Republicans delayed action on a major immigration and border security funding bill, pushing the fight into June. The bill was tied to ICE and CBP funding, but disputes over spending provisions stalled the vote before the Memorial Day recess. That delay now puts border funding, enforcement priorities, and the broader reconciliation package back into the June fight. The proposed $1.776 billion anti-weaponization fund is causing major friction in Congress. Republican senators met with Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche seeking answers about the fund's purpose, oversight, and eligibility rules. The dispute helped freeze action on the broader immigration funding package. The core issue is simple: who gets paid, who decides, and how the fund is protected from abuse. Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick is also demanding answers from the Justice Department about the nearly $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. Fitzpatrick is asking where the money comes from, who can receive payouts, and whether people convicted of federal crimes could qualify. That puts the fund under growing scrutiny from inside the Republican Party itself. A separate Senate payout controversy is back in focus after lawmakers moved to repeal a provision allowing senators to seek $500,000 for phone records obtained during investigations. Critics call it a self-serving cash grab. Supporters frame it as a privacy issue tied to government surveillance. Either way, the story has become a direct test of whether lawmakers write rules for the public or for themselves. Representative Thomas Mace is thanking Congressman David Rouzer for backing H.R. 5704, a bill to repeal the 2013 Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. Mace says the government should not use propaganda on American citizens. The bill lands inside a much larger fight over media, government messaging, information control, and public trust. Representative Nancy Mace has introduced a constitutional amendment that would bar naturalized citizens from serving in Congress, becoming federal judges, or holding Senate-confirmed positions. Mace named Ilhan Omar, Pramila Jayapal, and Sri Thanadar as examples of the issues she wants addressed. The proposal is already a major political flashpoint because it would draw a hard legal line between natural-born and naturalized citizens in federal power. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger lost his Republican primary, marking another major defeat for a Trump critic inside the GOP. Raffensperger became nationally known after the 2020 election fight in Georgia. His loss shows that Trump's influence remains strong in Republican primaries, especially against officials tied to the 2020 election dispute. President Trump is backing a rail safety amendment tied to East Palestine, Ohio. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee advanced rail safety language in a broader highway bill, including stronger requirements for hazardous material trains, wheel-bearing detection, and two-person crews. The East Palestine disaster remains a symbol of what happens when infrastructure failure, hazardous cargo, and government response collide.
At shop.isitwaya.com, everything you buy supports Qnotables, the place where people talk freely no matter what. Check out our Qn Honey Pot, a jar of yummy honey that's as strong as your voice. Put it on toaster and tea. It's not just honey, it's freedom in every bite. Then there's Qn Butter, a smooth handmade skin cream that makes you feel good while you fight for what's right. Awesome wood and pieces for display only. Hang them up or set them out. They're for showing off Qn's tough spirit. Want to help even more? Get a proto membership. So go to shop.isitwaya.com now and grab some goodies. Help Qnotables keep free speech alive, and let's keep the ideas flowing loud and free.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here.
From the Q Research Boards, May 22, 2026 Congress is moving multiple House and Senate bills at once, with border funding, government spending, election measures, rail safety, and daylight saving time all in play. The calendar is tight, and delays before the June session are shaping what can pass before summer. The next stretch in Congress will decide whether these measures move or die in the pileup. The Sunshine Protection Act is moving again after a 48-1 vote in the House Energy and Commerce Committee. The bill would make daylight saving time permanent and end the twice-a-year clock change. It still needs full House and Senate approval, but the committee vote shows strong momentum behind ending the clock-switching routine. A new affordability push is focusing on grocery prices and family costs. Lawmakers and policy groups are pitching plans to lower food, utility, housing, and healthcare costs. Grocery inflation remains one of the most visible pressure points for American households, and both parties know family budgets will be central to the political fight ahead. The White House says it is cutting Biden-era regulations to save Americans billions of dollars. President Trump and EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin announced rollbacks of refrigerant rules that the administration says could save about $2.4 billion, especially for grocery stores and refrigerated transportation. The administration is framing the move as a cost-cutting measure for businesses and consumers. Turning to election integrity, President Trump is again putting election rules, the SAVE Act, and drone technology at the center of his message. The election debate is now tied to citizenship verification, mail voting, and federal election standards. Trump is framing election security as a national security issue, while drone defense is becoming part of the broader discussion over protecting the homeland. The Justice Department has also moved to wipe out major January 6th convictions involving former Proud Boys and Oath Keepers members. The department asked a federal court to vacate the convictions and send the cases back to the district court for dismissal. That marks a major reversal in the January 6th prosecutions and puts the entire lawfare debate back on center stage. Now to international conflict. U.S. naval power remains active in the Middle East as carrier operations continue near the Arabian Sea. The Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is operating amid pressure on Iranian ports and regional shipping lanes. The Navy is maintaining a heightened posture as Iran, shipping security, and regional conflict remain major concerns. The USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group has arrived in the Caribbean as pressure builds on Cuba. U.S. Southern Command confirmed the carrier group is operating in the region. That adds a major military signal during rising tensions between Washington and Havana and places U.S. naval power back into a region with deep Cold War history. Russia is conducting major nuclear exercises as tensions with NATO continue to rise. President Vladimir Putin says Russia does not seek an arms race, but Moscow is keeping its nuclear triad at what it calls a necessary and sufficient level. The drills include strategic missiles and nuclear-capable systems, keeping nuclear deterrence directly in the headlines. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz is proposing a special associate status for Ukraine inside the European Union. The idea would bring Ukraine closer to EU institutions before full membership, but without full voting rights. It is a middle ground plan as Europe debates how far and how fast to integrate Ukraine into its political and economic structure. President Trump says the United States will send 5,000 additional troops to Poland. The announcement follows concerns over U.S. force posture in Europe and comes as Poland pushes for stronger security guarantees along NATO's eastern flank. Polish officials thanked Trump and called the U.S.-Poland alliance strong. Alberta will hold a public vote in October on whether the province should begin the constitutional process toward a binding independence referendum. Premier Danielle Smith says the vote is non-binding and that she personally supports staying in Canada. Even so, the move shows deep political tension between Alberta and Ottawa. A Kremlin-linked envoy is warning of an energy tsunami hitting Europe as regional energy pressure builds. The warning comes as Europe continues moving away from Russian energy, while instability in the Middle East adds more pressure to oil, gas, and shipping markets. Energy security is again becoming a weapon, a bargaining chip, and a pressure point. The United States is looking to strengthen energy ties with India. U.S. officials say India remains a key strategic partner, and energy cooperation is expected to be a major part of Secretary of State Marco Rubio's diplomatic push. The message is that energy, trade, and security are now tied together in the U.S.-India relationship. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is heading to Sweden for NATO meetings with alliance members and Arctic counterparts. Rubio says NATO must be good for all involved. The talks are expected to focus on burden sharing, Arctic security, and pressure around the Iran conflict. The Arctic is no longer a quiet backwater. It is becoming a front line in great power competition. U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin met with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico City. Both sides pledged continued security cooperation, while Mexico emphasized coordination without subordination. The talks come amid cartel pressure, migration issues, and new U.S. indictments involving Mexican officials. Russian truckmaker Kamaz is returning to a 4-day work week as the country's heavy truck market continues to weaken. The company says the domestic truck market has slumped sharply with falling demand, high inventories, and pressure from imported Chinese vehicles. The move shows economic strain inside Russia's industrial base. Chinese markets took another hit as reports circulated of roughly 2 trillion yuan in market value being erased on May 20th. The move adds to concerns about China's financial stability, investor confidence, and pressure facing Chinese equities. China's economy remains one of the biggest wildcards in the global financial system. While UAW President Shawn Fain is calling for major changes to the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. The union says USMCA and earlier trade deals damaged American manufacturing, weakened wages, and helped move auto jobs across borders. The 2026 review of the trade pact is now shaping up as a major labor and manufacturing fight.
Every voice matters. The power of free speech is more important than ever. Imagine a place where you can share your thoughts freely, explore new ideas, and engage in meaningful conversations anonymously. With online anonymity, you can express yourself without fear of judgment. It's about freedom, creativity, and connection. Join the conversation that matters. Embrace your voice. Celebrate your freedom. Visit 8kun.top today. That's 8kun.top.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. From the Q Research Board's May 22, 2026, Turning Now to Crime, gun rights groups are pushing back after New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin subpoenaed firearms dealers for years of Glock buyer records. The NRA says the subpoenas target lawful dealers and could amount to a backdoor gun registry. The fight is now moving into a larger Second Amendment and privacy battle. Federal and local agencies continue targeting child exploitation cases nationwide. The Justice Department and regional task forces are focusing on online predators, child abuse material, and rescue operations aimed at identifying children in danger. These cases show the growing scale of online exploitation and the need for aggressive enforcement. Operation Firewall in Southern California led to 341 arrests and the rescue or identification of 40 children. The 2-week crackdown covered 5 counties and targeted internet crimes against children. Law enforcement says the operation exposed the scale of online predator networks and removed children from active danger. An Austin shooting spree suspect tied to 12 attacks has been identified by prosecutors as an illegal immigrant. 17-year-old Christian Mondragon Fajardo is accused alongside 2 other teens in a 28-hour rampage that injured multiple people and targeted homes, vehicles, and fire stations. The case brings together public safety, juvenile crime, immigration enforcement, and the breakdown of basic order. Now to technology and media power. Quantum computing stocks surged after reports that the U.S. government plans roughly $2 billion in funding incentives and equity stakes for quantum firms. IBM, D-Wave, Rigetti, and other companies moved higher as investors reacted to Washington's push into strategic quantum technology. The race for quantum computing is now a national security race. The Navy says modular construction will be central to its future battleship effort. The new shipbuilding plan calls for distributed construction across the industrial base, allowing shipyards to focus on final assembly, integration, and testing. The goal is faster production and a more resilient shipbuilding pipeline. Navy special operations and allied defense programs are moving deeper into underwater drones and mini-submarine technology. Unmanned underwater systems are becoming a major part of future surveillance, strike, and undersea warfare planning. The next battle space will not only be in the air or on land, it will also be under the water. James Murdoch's Lupa Systems is buying New York Magazine, Vox.com, and the Vox Media Podcast Network in a deal valued at more than $300 million. The transaction gives Murdoch control of several major digital media properties while other Vox brands are spun into a separate company. That is a major media consolidation story with political and cultural reach. Disney is facing a $5 million lawsuit over facial recognition technology at its California theme parks. The lawsuit says Disney collected biometric data from adults and children without clear disclosure or proper consent. Disney says the system is used for ticket verification and fraud prevention. The case puts biometric surveillance, consumer consent, and child privacy in the spotlight. Lisa Monaco, who served as Deputy Attorney General during the Biden administration, joined Microsoft as President of Global Affairs in 2025. Her move into a senior role at one of America's largest government technology contractors continues to draw scrutiny because of Microsoft's federal footprint and Monaco's prior DOJ role. The revolving door between government power and corporate power remains wide open. The Federal Reserve's next FOMC meeting is scheduled for June 16th and 17th, with Kevin Warsh now set to lead the central bank. Warsh replaces Jerome Powell as Fed chair at a time when inflation, oil prices, and rate expectations are all under pressure. The next Fed meeting could shape the direction of borrowing costs, markets, and the broader economy heading into summer. And that is the through line tonight. Fraud exposed, border enforcement back in the fight, Congress divided over spending and compensation, election integrity back on the table, U.S. military power moving across multiple theaters, crime crackdowns widening, and technology becoming central to both war and surveillance. From Minnesota fraud to quantum funding, from Cuba pressure to child predator arrests, the pattern is clear. The systems are being tested, the money trails are being exposed, and the public is watching who protects the country and who protects the machine.
Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com. 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 Share the site with others. Don'tDeleteMeBro.com.
That's all for now. Stay alert, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. See you soon.